It's weird because I could see your faces really well when I was over there, but now there's these lights, and they're gorgeous and they're great for filming, but I can't see your faces, and that's strange at a vigil. Because I feel like in vigils, it's really important to be able to see everybody's faces and make eye contact and all that kind of stuff. But I'll make do for now, and then when we light the candles, I'm sure I'll be able to see everybody again. Today, on Transgender Day of Remembrance, I am tired. It has been a truly exhausting week for me, the kind of week that you feel in your bones, the kind of week where your body longs for your bed, the kind of week when you don't know if you're going to be able to produce another sentence, the kind of week when the tweets are coming in faster than you can keep up with. This week, I was on national television for 22 and a half minutes, and in those 22 and a half minutes, they talked about my family, about my life, and about our community. In those 22 minutes, they chronicled a journey that I recently undertook to seek my father's love and acceptance as a genderqueer person. They showed me strutting around New York City in a dress. They showed strangers heckling me. And they showed me having hard conversations with my father that I never want to have again on TV. If you're thinking about reality TV with your parents, come talk to me first. It was fabulous with my mother. She's right over there. It was just awkward with my dad. Perhaps one of the hardest conversations that I had with my father during the course of filming happened one evening as we were cooking dinner with my friend Deanna. She asked me if it was easier to be genderqueer in North Carolina or in New York. And I told her that in many ways, it was actually easier to be genderqueer in North Carolina because in New York, I have to take public transportation pretty much everywhere. In North Carolina, even if you don't have a car personally, most people get from place to place in a car. I had spent most of my life living in an automobile-centric world and taking that very much for granted. That changed when I moved to New York. I no longer had a car, and suddenly I became preoccupied with what I wore. I became meticulous about knowing exactly where I was going when I would go to parties or events. I became deeply skeptical of neighborhoods that I didn't know very well. I became very nervous being alone. I became paranoid for my safety. I went from wearing a skirt, leaving my dorm room, getting in the car and driving to my next destination, to wearing a skirt, leaving my apartment, walking on the sidewalk, and then walking on the sidewalk again to my destination. My life became a public spectacle, something for children and adults and strangers and police to stare at, judge, consume, or mock. It felt like my body no longer belonged to me anymore. And that made me terrified. As a trans person, I know that I am at risk of being heckled, harassed, beaten, stabbed, or worse. So, in front of a camera crew, I did my best to explain all of this to my friend Deanna. As I was explaining all of this, my dad came downstairs and started listening. Unexpectedly, he jumped into the conversation and something clicked. He told me that, as my father, he lives in fear too. My parents live in fear that someone is going to hurt me. For the first time that I can remember, with a camera crew in my house, he told me that he was scared for my life. But then he went on to say something else. "Can't you just tone it down a little, Jacob?" he pleaded. "If you insist on dressing like this, you're making yourself a target," he said, throwing up his hands in exasperation. "You're making yourself a target, Jacob." I paused, unsure of what to say to him. It wasn't the first time that someone had told me that I was making myself a target, but it was the first time that I'd heard it from my own father. When he said it, I physically cringed. As trans people, we don't make ourselves targets. Other people make us targets. As trans people, we don't devalue our bodies. Other people do that for us. As trans people, we don't ask for violence. Other people impose violence on us. As trans people, we aren't abominations. Other people make us abominable. As trans people, we don't bring about a transphobic world. Other people create a transphobic world that we are forced to live in. This week, I was on national television for 22 minutes. And for some reason, that number kept ringing in my head. 22 minutes. 22 minutes. I couldn't figure out why that number felt so familiar to me. I couldn't figure it out until I sat down to write my remarks today. I was on television for 22 minutes this week, and this year so far, 22 transgender and gender nonconforming people, most of them transgender women of color, have been killed in acts of reckless violence and hatred. For every minute that I was on screen, you could have told the story of a different transgender person who was murdered this year. For every minute that I was talking about my life as a genderqueer person, you could have talked about another trans life that was lost to hate violence. But they didn't do that. They weren't talking about them. So few people seem to be talking about them. So few people seem to know how to address the murders of trans people in popular culture. And I've been racking my brain over the past few days trying to figure out if I could explain why that is. The reason why they don't talk about the fact that we're dying is because they view us as disposable. The death of a transgender person is not deemed a tragedy by the mainstream media. The transgender community lives under constant terror for decades, terrorized by police officers and citizens, and teachers and principals, and parents and rabbis and priests and imams and congresspeople and senators and governors and pastors alike. But where is our national outcry? Where is the mourning for us? Where are the thousands of headlines about our lives being lost? Why isn't trans death seen for the tragedy that it is? Our deaths are not seen as tragedy because we are not seen as fully human. Our deaths are not seen as tragedy because violence against us is expected. Our deaths are not seen as tragedy because they say that we brought it upon ourselves, that we deserve what comes to us. But trans people don't deserve violence. We don't deserve hatred. We don't deserve terror against our community. We do not deserve to be murdered in the street, run over by cars, our homes set on fire, our bodies left in dumpsters. No. No, we deserve the best that life has to offer. We deserve to be loved. We deserve to be understood. We deserve to be embraced, to be held, to be cuddled and snuggled and hugged. More than that, we deserve to grow old. We deserve to sit on porches watching our grandchildren play in the yard. We deserve the ability to flip through scrapbooks, telling the next generation what things were like back in the day. We deserve to mentor young people in our elder years. And when we die, we deserve to die in peace at an old age, surrounded by loved ones, at home in our bodies, loved fully as we are, cherished by our communities. That is what we deserve. As trans people, that is what we are owed. That is all that we are asking for. And today, hand in hand with y'all on Transgender Day of Remembrance, I pray that we will live to see a world where we get what we deserve.